What's up, YouTube and Instagram? This is Kiyan Sobhani. What you're about to listen to is a compiled version of two separate Messi clips, which I've put into one. So clip number one is from Thursday's Messi mailbag on the Managing Madrid podcast for our patrons, where Arvin and I took all your Real Madrid questions, but started the podcast just by taking the time to talk about the whole Messi situation and what it means for Madridistas and La Liga. And then the second part of this clip is from Friday's patron episode for Churros y Tácticas. So our Churros y Tácticas patrons listen to Diego and I talk about Messi further and how Madridistas should kind of feel about it. Obviously, the discussion itself was much broader in scope, and over the course of these two podcasts, it was over two hours of discussion. But just respect to your time and what you might be interested to, primarily because this is a Real Madrid channel. I kind of kept the Real Madrid bits of it, or the Real Madrid perspective, and kept it in this podcast and compiled it. As always, if you want more timely analysis and certainly the Messi stuff, you probably wanted to hear the emergency podcast right away, you have to subscribe to the podcast. These YouTube clips is just something I kind of just throw up there so people on YouTube can also see them and sometimes see the video version of these podcasts as well. But they are not the timely podcasts. So if you're wondering why the podcasts are coming out sometimes a day or two after on YouTube, or they're just smaller clips and not the whole episode, it's because these are just clips. YouTube is not meant for the full episode. So for the full experience, make sure you subscribe to both Managing Madrid and Churros y Tácticas on your podcast app. And I also thought, just in case maybe you're only a patron of one of Managing Madrid or Churros y Tácticas, you get a taste of both here in one clip. So you can kind of see the best of both worlds. Big congrats, by the way, to everybody who bought the Los Angeles tickets. We still have a few spots left, so if you want to get in, go for it. We'd love to see you, but you better book really fast. And it's going to be an amazing start to our world tour in September. So if you hear any of these cities near you, Los Angeles, Toronto, Dallas, New York, Miami, London, UK, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Mumbai, and you want to come to one of those podcasts, make sure you book your tickets ASAP. If you have any issues, just put a comment on this video and I'll help you out. So yeah, without further ado, here are two clips respectively from Thursday and Friday, and I hope you enjoy them. It's really hilarious when you think about this. Okay, let's rewind it to last year for a second here, and you laid out a lot of the financial gymnastics involved in even making something like this to work, and requires some bending of the rules. And let's play a little game of hindsight. I love playing this game, the game of hindsight, which is super easy to do, but I think this one there's at least a little bit of merit in it. Last season, Messi, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm going based on memory right now, pure memory. I think I remember it well enough because it was that prevalent, and it feels like yesterday when last summer Messi said he's leaving and then he couldn't. The issue there, and he did not want to stay. The issue there was he waited too long to basically get this and the announcement going and basically proclaim himself as leaving, and his contract auto-renewed. And then the release clause was 700 million. So therefore, after he announced that he's leaving, however badly he was advised by his family and his agents that maybe we should have just looked over the contract and did this a little bit and figured out the timing before we do something stupid like this. So then he didn't get the timing right. He ends up staying as a Barcelona player. And if he wants to move at that point, no one can afford him because 700 million. If Barca were really smart about this, I know, and I know it's blasphemy. I know it's insane to even think about selling arguably the greatest player of all time. It kind of would have made sense to just sell him last summer, man. You weren't going to win anything this year anyway. I know, maybe you thought you did, and that's fair. But it was going to be a transition year. You're not going to sell him for 700 million, but what you could have done is just lower the amount you were asking. A lot of your financial situation would have been better now. you would have just gotten basically a head start in the inevitable, and that's life without Messi, which you're going to have now anyway. It's kind of like when you look at Real Madrid and Barcelona, the difference between them in the last few years. A lot of people will talk about like the Real Madrid's debt, and there's actually a question about it, so I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. It's kind of like, oh, well, Real Madrid is in a bad situation too. It's just that it's less bad than Barca. I actually do think there's merit a lot in the way Real Madrid are running things from a financial perspective. We can go over, and today I went over the entire financial report that they released like last week or whatever it was, and just went over it again. And it was really remarkable what they did from a financial perspective. I'm not saying they would have sold Messi if they owned them, but certainly the way they've dealt with their stars and cashing in on them instead of holding on to them, I can't imagine what it would have been like now if they had not, been more as frugal as they were. So just think, in hindsight, selling him would have made sense.
Well, I don't even think you need to be like this. Like you need to couch your language this much, because at the time, I mean, you weren't the only one saying this, right? I mean, a lot of people were saying it emotionally because they care more about Messi than the club. But like, when it becomes a position where your star player has announced that they're going to leave, something they've never done before, right? And they're basically saying he's like done with the club. He's disgusted with the club that he loves. He's been here, all this like blah blah blah. I mean, like, just let it go, right? And Manchester City were there. They were there with the 100 mil or whatever. Pep was ready to bring him on, apparently. And I mean, this is in the same Athletic article I was reading. I mean, take it with as much salt as you want to, but apparently there's an idea that Manchester City are a lot more cautious now because they don't want to get burned again. They felt burned last season in 2016. Suarez convinced Messi not to go to City. They felt burned then, and like Pep got really pissed off by the last time. We'll see. I mean, when Messi's on the table, I don't know how much that matters, but Man City were there. It was going to happen. Man City were ready. They had the money. They were making everything they needed to happen. People were talking about how Messi was going to fit there, and ultimately the ball was in Barca's court. Everything was there, and the funny thing is that Bartomeu did this partly to save his presidency, right? If I'm not mixing up the dates, right? Like his idea that if I keep Messi, I can still remain there. And I mean, he's out. I mean, he got kicked out anyway. Literally, like nothing. It didn't benefit them in any real way when you consider that he has to leave one season afterwards, where Barcelona ended up winning nothing, right? Like imagine how much that 100 mil would contribute to that 200 mil problem they have right now, right? Like they should have just done it there. Like when Messi gets up and says, I'm done and I want you to stop holding me hostage or whatever, like I don't know what you gain by keeping him. And it just shows how terribly they run, the gambles they make without thinking, and they just never think it's going to catch up to them. All short-term thinking, and everyone gets wrapped up in it. They see Barca get away with it. They think, oh, they can keep doing this. And then finally we come to a position like this, and everyone is shocked. Like, oh my God, the consequences of their actions caught up to them. You can't keep running from it forever. Like, it's not possible, as we're seeing now.
Having said that, and like, I see what you're saying about like basically they kidnapped him, they held him hostage, I think it's a case to case basis. I don't think there's like one rule you put over this as like a blanket and say you always hold your best player no matter what if they want to leave, or the other way where you say if the player wants to leave, I'm always just going to let him leave. I think there's a balance in between. It's a case to case basis. I think there are situations where the club should exercise their right to be like, no, just suck it up, stay here. We need you. You're under contract. Like, for example, the fact that Harry Kane has 3 freaking years left on his contract, I totally see Tottenham's point in being like, you know what? You signed this freaking 6-year deal. I don't know why you did it, but worked out for us. So just sit tight. We'll see what happens in like a year from now. And the flip side of that is like, if Manchester City will end up playing like 130 million, whatever it is, which I think is a little bit too much for Kane. as brilliant as he is just because the injuries scare me. I think they could probably take that, but it's case to case basis. But the Messi one, I actually thought, and almost basically purely based on his age and the fact that he has declined. It shows up in the eye test when we watch him play. He's not as influential as he used to be. Funny enough, actually, like analytically, he's still a monster, obviously. So, take that for what take that with a grain of salt. But do you worry like, where do you stand on the Madridista scale of, like, from 1 to 10, 1 being I like Messi around because he's like the younger brother that you fight with, and it's good for the league and it's good for the Clásico, or 10 being like, I'm done with this guy, man. He fucking tortured me half my life. Get out of here. I don't want you here. Where do you stand on that scale?
I can't wait till he's gone. Like, I mean, I never want to see him again. Like, all this bullshit about, like, oh man, like, it's I couldn't be happier. Like, this is happening right now. I mean, it's not exactly coming out because I'm really tired right now, but if and when that, like, statement comes, I'm going to be like, it's just dopamine coursing through my brain. Like, I mean, get that dude out of here. He's like, for the past, like, Barca should not have been nearly as competitive as they've been for the last several seasons because they've been in consistently poor positions because of everything we've been discussing up until now. But because they've had Messi, they've always been able to make it work, right? And this is not saying Barca can never get back to the top because, under Laporta, if they are financially strict, right, and they take the hit for the next 2 to 3 seasons, I mean, they'll be rich again, right? All they have to do is just actually operate, I mean, with some fucking sense, right? And they'll have the money again, but they'll never have Messi again, right? And 2 to 3 seasons is a long time of football. Like, if Barca are hurting badly in that period of time, I will take it. Atletico Madrid is our only real competitor in the league. Like, just give those, like, I'll take him any day of the week, right? Like, I'm all for, like, league strength and, bettering the strength of the league, right? One part of the CVC deal I liked was distribution of money, but that comes from an organizational league perspective. When it comes to the teams themselves, operating within that, do whatever you can to get the competitive advantage. And that means not at all feeling sad that your most hated rival is losing their greatest ever player. Like, I will not shed a single tear that Messi is leaving, and I don't know why any Real Madrid fan should.
To me, like, there were the 2 biggest stories of the year so far were the Super League and this Messi thing. In terms of my own reality anyway, like, those are the ones that I just couldn't work. I was refreshing Twitter. I was talking shit on WhatsApp. It completely deviated my entire workday. And so that was kind of my canned response. I was like, yeah, see you later. Thanks. I'm really glad you're leaving. But how I really feel is like, it's kind of like when you have a neighbor on the street that has a really beautiful house, and he's kind of like, he doesn't really bring you any particular value in terms of, like, maybe don't have an emotional connection with him. You don't really care if he's there or not. But, let's say he moves out and then the new person who comes in doesn't take care of his house as much. The lawn gets a little bit messy. Doesn't really make the renovations. The value of the entire street.
Homer with Flanders. Did you see that Simpsons episode?
Flanders is the one who takes care of his shit, right? And Homer doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like swapping out Flanders for Homer. Actually, to be honest, I'd rather have Homer as a neighbor, but that's a different point than I'm trying to make. I just think, like, it's kind of like that. Like, if Messi's gone, the value of the entire street, the street being the league, is not as high now. And I've always, anytime Barcelona have been good, it's brought out of Real Madrid the best that they needed to be. It's pushed them. It's, we followed up the dream team in the 90s with, maybe that's not a good, because it wasn't immediately after, but okay, I guess the best example is basically Barcelona had the greatest team ever in 2009, and we couldn't really quite match that, but it damn pushed us to fill every single position in the squad with a world-class player, bring in someone like Mourinho to pick us up off our feet and give us some mental confidence. That stuff pushes us. So I think for the entire sake of the league, the marketability, the ratings, it's important for players like Messi, like Ramos, like Ronaldo, these guys to be here. So, am I happy? It doesn't make that much of a difference to me. Like, I'm not celebrating that Messi's gone. Like I said, I felt like he was kind of gone physically, like, or spiritually anyway, like the last couple of years. I just feel like it's not good for the league. I'm worried about it. And I just can't believe, like, looking at those Laporta quotes today about, like, how this mess started. And I also start to think a lot, Diego, about the future outlooks of Real Madrid and Barcelona. Real Madrid at least have this, they're a little bit healthier financially, and they have the stadium coming up. Once the stadium renovations are done, that's going to be a huge financial boost to them. So their outlook is a little bit better in that sense. But man, anyone who wanted La Liga to bend over for Barca here, they can't. They literally can't. And I'm not saying La Liga are good guys, because we can have a whole podcast about why La Liga is doing just shitty behind the scenes organizational stuff. And even the CVC deal was, there was good reason why Real Madrid and Barcelona were upset about it. And Athletic Club was the third one. I just think, like, there's no way you could have accommodated Barcelona's request here. If they did, Barca would have been screwed financially even more. So, like, they can't intervene and be like, okay, fine, we want to keep Messi, so we're going to reward your incompetence by letting you keep him too. I completely understand why La Liga didn't do that.